Good morning, welcome, one and all. Welcome to the Defo Show with Defo a bit and Lubie here on South Florida Live. We have a Put Yourself Off the Mat Monday, and I'm presuming no one's putting themselves off the mat more than this gentleman live from Atlantic City, New Jersey, the one and only Jeff DeForest. Good morning, Defo. Okay. Yeah, so Dave, I'm having some technical issues. Let me try you on the other line, and I'll give you a call right back. Okay? They're not hearing you; they're only hearing me for some fucking reason. So let me try this again. All right, bye. All righty. So not sure why you're only hearing me. That is weird. Never had phone issues of that magnitude so far. So we will uh, try this again. I'm going to give Defo a call back, and then yes, I know, Jonah. Thank you. I appreciate you guys a heads up. Yeah, so not sure why phone's not working, which would be a big dilemma because I have Defo, and then we have the NFL agent to the start, Brett Tessler at 7:30, and then we have Antwan Staley at 8:20, all via phone. So I have to figure this thing out. So I'm going to give Defo a call again. We're going to go to a quick break. Yes, the Super Bowl happened last night. There was a questionable call. Again, I don't think it was questionable. I think it was pretty clear. And I think it did have an effect on the game. But there was a call at the end of the game that made the game go from exciting to boring. And we will talk more about that when we get back. This is the Defo Show. Defo will be there, hopefully. And we'll be here on South Florida Live. More after this.
Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
Hey folks, Tony Segreto here. You know, since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of Old School. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapist, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place, and that one place is Catholic Health Services.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
The world, I mean, if my point was ever going to be embellished and going to be proven true, the world has gotten me sugar now.
Grab a bagel and a schmear, plus some Defo and Lubie. Welcome back to the Defo Show.
Alrighty, apologize for the technical issues. Defo is there, and you should now hear him. Again, good morning from Atlantic City, the one and only Jeff DeForest.
All of that wisdom went out the window.
I heard you.
All right. Here I am in Atlantic City. It's great. Very depressed Atlantic City yesterday after that ball game was over. It was just unbelievable. I don't know if any of this got out there, but I would have to say it was, and this would be anticipated. I didn't think
yeah, you're good.
Anybody. I had a little feedback there.
Yeah,
I didn't see. I didn't see anybody, there was like one guy with a Kansas City Chiefs jersey on.
Was that you?
No, I was very quiet because I was sitting with a couple of kids. I guess they had just turned old enough. They were like celebrating a birthday, but this was a double celebration. Not just because, no longer do you worry about passing the drinking age, but you worry about, or you're happy that you finally became of gambling age, legalized gambling age. And these guys had unloaded on the Philadelphia Eagles on the money line in this ball game. So they weren't even willing to lay the 1.5. So I'm not sure how strong their conviction was. And things were looking good for them for about a half of the game. And I left the area where they were in at halftime and then moved on to another part of the casino there because the Rihanna halftime show largely being panned, Lubie. What did you think of that? Let's get into that a little bit here because it was lip synced very badly. I mean, it looked like a kung fu movie. Yeah, I mean, yeah, really. It was something, some cheap Japanese kung fu movie that you were watching. And who made those outfits? Because they made a lot of money. It looked like a total fashion mistake, didn't it?
Okay,
and, imagine selling like a couple of hundred of those to the dancers in the Rihanna halftime show.
Okay, what were they doing with that? And my mom didn't say something that was a slur, but my mom was like, they look like some sort of an animal. And I'm like, yeah, we don't say that when there's a bunch of black people. But she wasn't wrong. Like, I don't know what they were going for with the white outfits. Like, usually they make a statement. I don't understand what those were. And the question that I was watching with my parents, the question we had was, is she still, and I don't know if this is sexist, I don't know anymore in this day and age, and I don't want to be, but I know she had a kid within the last year.
Yeah.
Even when you keep baby weight, it doesn't look like that. It only looks like that when you're on to the next kid. So I don't understand, like, it looked like she may still be pregnant, to be brutally honest. And I don't know, you get in trouble as a man saying that, but my mother was the one that said it, so I don't feel so bad. My mother's the one that, maybe it was the outfit, but that was a weird ass outfit. And also her dancing. Rihanna was always a decent dancer. Like, she wasn't maybe Britney Spears, but she wasn't Beyonce. Like, she would dance, and she wasn't dancing. So I don't know if she's not in shape. I don't know what it is, but those are my issues with it. I like the songs, but it seemed weird. Like, the whole thing had a little weird vibe to it.
Well, it turned out it looked like she was about to give birth on stage. And you know what? I felt like I was giving birth watching the thing because, it just didn't move me in any particular direction. I was never, a huge Rihanna fan, but I have nothing, negative about Rihanna. She seemed like a very well-respected entertainer. I believe she has an excellent voice. I think that came through. But the show itself, I mean, you couldn't have fallen any flatter, could you? There were people that were really digging it, and I was in a bar at the time, the Carousel kind of bar that they have here on the casino floor at Harrah's. I had moved on from the pool party, and they blasted the halftime show, which people were, going crazy, dancing and loving it, even guys, But it was ponderous, I thought. One of the strangest halftime shows ever. And how come nobody knew this woman was pregnant before she took the stage?
There you go. So she is pregnant. And look, I looked it up last night because I wasn't trying to be rude, but like, she was doing all the moves of either an old Jewish man or a pregnant woman. And I was like, but she hasn't said anything. So we looked it up, and it wouldn't say anything about pregnant, like, at all. So I'm like,
oh no, they came out, I guess, either shortly after or even during the show.
She wasn't moving.
And said she was a couple of months pregnant, which kind of ruined it. It would have made it easy for the professor to cash on his cleavage bet, because there was a proposition bet about whether or not Rihanna would show cleavage, and she always does. In virtually every picture or photograph, photo opportunity she's ever been exhibited in, always showing cleavage. And this time she zipped up, right to the neck. So it turned out that I guess she was pregnant. That became a big issue. But why wouldn't they just tell you that before she took the stage? You would think with all the Super Bowl facts that come out in the 2 weeks before the game and the number of promos there were for Rihanna's halftime show, they might have mentioned, oh yeah, and by the way, she's going to do this while she's pregnant. But it reminds me of the time, and you always, I don't blame you for being reluctant to say anything about it, Lubie, at the time, because I will never forget the time that I was sitting with a guy. I was doing a radio show, and one of the salesmen was there with his wife, and she was at the bar, and she looked to be about to give birth. A very attractive woman. And I thought I was being a nice guy, by asking the guy, so when is the baby due? And the guy looked at me ashen white with daggers in his eyes and said, my wife's not pregnant. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, that is the weirdest shaped belly I have ever seen on a woman if she's not pregnant. And she didn't look like the type of woman that would be overweight either. But, and there's nothing more embarrassing than that. I mean, there's no taking that back. All you got to do, you got to buy the guy a drink and walk away. That's all you can do. There's no further conversation after that, That was it. But everybody was wondering what the hell was going on with Rihanna. I mean, that wasn't really the highlight of the game. It turned out to be a great game. It took forever to transpire because of the halftime show and things like that. And I guess they have elongated commercial breaks. I'm not sure if they add time to that because it's $7 million for every 30 seconds. That would be advantageous, I would imagine, for Fox to help pay the salaries of Greg Olson and Burkhardt and all of the other people there. But they had 100 people covering that game, didn't they?
Yep.
6 people on the pregame show and people on the sidelines, people all over the place. But $7 million for a 30-second commercial, which I would have to say I caught really the gist of none of them. I don't know if you were watching for the commercials, but in the setting I was in, which I would imagine at least half of the viewers of the Super Bowl were watching at some kind of party, impossible to distinguish what was going on in any of the commercials. The only thing I noticed is that John Travolta looks nothing like John Travolta anymore. I don't even know what he was selling, but he looks nothing like he used to. I didn't recognize him. They almost needed to super him up, super his name up there and go, yeah, this is John Travolta. Reprising his role in Grease.
Oh my God.
That was the one that caught my attention because people were saying, it's Travolta. I'm like, nah, no way. What are you talking about? Looks like some trucker that's in the Union here in Atlantic City. When did he go bald, Travolta?
Oh, I think a while ago. What's funny is you said something that actually did hit home because I don't know if I knew what any of the commercials had to do with.
Yeah, like, that's always the thing.
At the end, it said Ram. Like, oh, it's a truck.
Amazing, yeah. Even when they were doing it out with the light beers, it was for some other beer.
Exactly.
Which they flashed up at the end. I go, yeah, well, that'll encourage me to drink that beer for sure. That they put together an asinine commercial that tells you nothing about their product. How do these guys like it? Gray advertising and Young and Rubicon. How do they get paid? And the kind of monster money they make in the ad business to come up with shit like that. It's unbelievable. But I take nothing. I should take nothing away from the game. All of the ancillary stuff. I mean, it turned out to be a beautiful ball game. And when Mahomes went down at halftime, all of the Eagles fans were cheering. It was almost like Michael Irvin was laying on the middle of the field in Philadelphia.
Oh, no.
They were going nuts when he hobbled around off the field there after that tackle before the half. And you thought, is this game really going to be on the shoulders of Chad Henne, who announced his retirement after the ball game after what? I mean, he had played a total of about 6 downs in the last 10 years. And those were very productive as, he managed to rally the team in one of their playoff games for a touchdown. But other than that, nobody even knew he was still in the league. And as we were saying at the time, I thought it was his son. But everybody in the place was absolutely euphoric, thinking, okay, Eagles are up 10 and Chad Henne's going to come into the ballgame. This thing is in the bag.
Oh my God.
I would imagine, too, that the Eagle fans even doubled up. The line was pretty long in the sports book to get wagers down at halftime. I would think everybody was unloading try and cash in again on the Philadelphia Eagles, who looked to be in pretty good command of the ballgame. Did they not? I mean, did it not look like Philadelphia was going to shred them and that Kansas City wasn't going to show up? So could we say these words here, as cliched as it is, Mike Lubitz? Halftime adjustments? Obviously, they did something at halftime to change the pace, including coming up with that same play that they ran for the last 2 touchdowns, where they put a guy in motion on the outside and he only ran a couple of steps, one way or the other. They did it from each side and then went back to the side that he was breaking from and scored with ease, with nobody anywhere near him.
Yep.
The vaunted Philadelphia defense was bagged twice by the very same play on opposite sides of the field. And one of them was a 3rd down play, which might have made a big difference, obviously. And then, the people got crushed when I don't know who the ball carrier was, but when he was about to go into the end zone with a couple of minutes to go.
Wasn't it your boy Pacheco? It wasn't Pacheco? I thought it was
I'm not
Pacheco.
sure who had that last carry before the field goal try, but when he slid at the 1-yard line, people were screaming. I mean, they couldn't believe it. There were guys that actually had the Chiefs by 7.
Oh, no.
Imagine your last thing you're thinking is that this guy is going to go ahead and slide and let the Kansas City milk the clock down to 0, which I'm not necessarily a big fan of that move because, Butker had already missed a 42-yard field goal. What if the thing gets blocked? I mean, you outsmart yourself. I know they didn't want to leave Hurts any time on the clock, but wouldn't you rather have a touchdown with like 1:50 to go than a field goal try with 8 seconds to go, which a lot of things can go wrong? I would have just run that ball into the end zone. Would you?
I was in the middle on it because you said it.
It turned out to be the right move, but it could have easily backfired.
He had missed the field goal already, and it was a makeable field goal. So I actually was sort of in the middle on it, but I was like, look, as long as they can get it under 15 seconds, then I'm okay. Because we've seen teams move the ball in 20 seconds this year. So Brady, a few other guys did it. So once it got to 8, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be okay. Like, I think he'll make it, and they're not going to have enough time to do it. Look, they didn't even run a play. I don't know what the fuck that was. Jalen Hurts doesn't have that strong of an arm. They treat him like it was fucking Jeff George.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there at the end. I was calling for the Salugi, and you would think they would have posted a price on that since they had gambling on virtually everything else. We might have hit our pregame. We would have hit our pregame parlay of tails and over on the anthem. Although, was that official that it went over?
Okay,
Mike Mayo said his wife timed the anthem. Some people said it went under. Mayo said it went 202, which the highest total I had seen was 201. But it did seem like, I mean, when he started stretching those words out, everybody applauded Stapleton, saying it might have been the second greatest anthem ever. I don't know if I go that far behind Whitney Houston. But wow, I mean, the whole country trends what were getting crushed as he was stretching out every note, and then took a little pause in there.
Yes, he did pause.
A pause. And I thought, this fucking country guy
yes, you over.
bet $2 million in some Korean sports book. Kim Jong-un himself might have, nuked that bet.
Oh,
and he is going to milk this for all it's worth and go over on the anthem when the trend with country singers is routinely under.
Ken got the official time that most of the books were going by was 2:02:79, so almost 2:03. But I guess officially that counts as 2:02. And I guess the day of. Now, again, we talked about this with another game. Like, to me, how many people wait to the day of? But okay, if you waited to the day of, yes, the day of, it had gone up to 2:02. So it actually was a push.
The line moving on the anthem.
Yes.
It's like the line moving on a coin toss, right? The heads people, I mean, they're unloading. The smart money's all on heads. But, a couple of the things I was going to do, which I didn't, because I thought it was insane. And I was going to bet that Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster to make the first catch in the game. So naturally, you need to lose the coin toss because you're figuring whoever wins the toss is going to defer getting the ball to the second half. Yep. I thought maybe if the Chiefs won the toss, they might take it first and try to put some points on Philadelphia and say, hey, you can put your defense out there in the field. We don't care. We're going to score on you anyway, which they might have done because they did score. I mean, they chewed them up on their first drive when they finally got the ball after Philadelphia had put a touchdown on the board. But as soon as they deferred after getting the coin toss victory, I knew I was dead because I didn't think Philly was going to go 3 and out without a completed pass. I figured they'd wing one to a back or something and, just get the ball rolling. So those two would have got up in smoke. And I was going to bet Edwards-Helaire to get the first touchdown in the game. And of course, Philadelphia. he never got in the game. Yeah. I don't think he sniffed it. I don't even think he dressed. He was active for the game. I didn't see him. Did you see any shots of Edwards-Helaire? I think we saw more shots of Ben Affleck, which I believe the professor might have lost that bit.
Yep.
Wasn't Affleck featured in a commercial? You would have thought the natural thing was for the Fox director to go right to the crowd and get the shot of Affleck. I thought that was a gimme. Yep. And at 4-1, that one also got crushed. I didn't see any shots of Affleck. Did you?
No, I didn't see any Affleck. And it was McKinnon. McKinnon was the one that slid and screwed all your Eagles buddies there in AC. McKinnon.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there were some people that actually, took variations. It's hard enough to hit the side, let's face it. And, it wasn't like it was, never in doubt that Kansas City was going to win the game. It became apparent, in the final minute. So what did you think about the penalty, the holding call, defensive holding call at the end there that moved the ball up in the field goal range? I kept them going that on what would have been a fourth down. It allowed them to run all the time off the clock. I guess they were still in field goal range.
Yes, it allowed them to milk. The clock was at about 1.5 minutes, and allowed them to go for 1.5 minutes and literally just run the game out. Look, maybe I'm biased. I've been on the Chief bandwagon this entire time. To me, what I saw, and I guess I saw something different than Greg Olson and Joel Klatt and Kirk Herbstreit. It looked early in the play. Well, when the play happened, I just thought Mahomes overshot the guy. But then when they showed the replay, it looked like the defender grabbed him and turned him, which totally ruins your route. Then the guy somehow got away and still had a beat on the ball, and then he grabbed him again. That's what I saw was 2 whole. Look, I get it, end of the game, but here's the deal. So what you're telling me is you think the game should be played modern style for 55 minutes and then under 5 minutes go back to 80s rules? Because I don't understand what else you could do there as a ref, but it was 2 holdings and it clearly impeded him from catching an easy touchdown. And I think it was a smart play by the defender because if they do miss it, cool, because he was beat. But if they catch it, you got to call it. It was blatant. At least to me, it seemed blatant. That's me.
I'm with you. It's funny. People complain the entire time, that you shouldn't swallow the whistle at the end of the game. And then when a ref makes a call at the end of the game that he would have made earlier in the game, it would have bothered me a lot if that wasn't the targeted receiver.
Yes, yes.
And in other words, if that was a play on the other side of the field away from the ball and they called that, that would have been an embarrassment. But since that was the guy that he was throwing to, and I don't know, the pass looked like it was going to be uncatchable even if he wasn't impeded. It was way overthrown, but there's no way to tell that. And the ref, I think, did the right thing there, because initially, before he even grabbed him from behind, which was kind of minor, that I would have let go. He had, as you said, put an arm around the guy and kind of taken him out of his route, which he was going to try to run to the outside. And it looked like the defensive back knew he was beaten. I think the back who was called and flagged for that penalty said, yeah, I did grab him.
He did. James Bradbury, after the game, said, I 100% held him. I grabbed him. I just thought I may get away with it. Okay, so good for him. That's literally what I said.
That's a stand-up guy right there, yeah, because, I mean, we don't know that would have changed the outcome of the game, because I believe Butker would have made the field goal anyway on fourth down after missing the first one, which dunked off the goalpost there, curling left. I think he would have made that field goal. He's generally a pretty reliable kicker from all distances, but from 40, I doubt he was going to miss two. It did allow them to run all the time off the clock there and be in command of the final minute of the game, minute and a half of the game. So, it was big. But there were a couple of other plays. The reversal of that call, the call no catch.
That was no catch.
When Kansas City got the second touchdown, would have had the second touchdown defensively on the fumble when Philadelphia threw a little swing pass, and the guy caught the ball, took a step forward, and then got smashed. And it was in the third quarter?
Yep.
Yeah, and they reversed that, said it was no catch, which that was very debatable. And then later on, they had a catch that was also significant in a drive that looked like it was no catch, and they gave it to the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot of suspect. I don't know how suspect. They're borderline calls. The amazing thing to me is how non-committal the official expert is. When they have, they bring in a guy. His only job is to determine whether or not the rule has been violated, or whether or not it's been correctly interpreted. On like 100 instant replays, and the guy can't make the commitment. Well, I don't know. It's like, well, what are they paying you for to be there? Same thing with the color analyst. I don't know how Greg Olson did. I didn't really get to hear too much of his commentary, because the crowd was pretty loud everywhere I was watching. But just say something, right? You're getting paid to have an opinion. Go ahead and have it. Both of those calls, I think, with Philadelphia receivers were a little bit suspect. I thought the first one was a catch. I've seen that play, called a non-catch and an incomplete pass. They eventually reversed it. Otherwise, it's 7 more points for the Chiefs there in a huge momentum swing. And then I guess it was the tight end that was juggling the ball as he went out of bounds.
Yep.
And, great play. But, if I'm looking at it and being completely objective, I thought he was still juggling the ball as he put his second foot down.
Yep.
And, they gave it to him for a significant gain. So complaining about the officiating in the game, I think is really just absolutely ridiculous. And I thought that was a hold. And for the defensive back to admit it, that's great, because, that should squash any debate about what actually transpired there.
Look, they have this thing, you have to make a football move, and they usually go, you need a third step.
Yeah.
That's because it usually takes the first 2 steps to catch the ball. So then you have to have possession and make a step. That's not what that play was. That play, he caught it without moving, and then made 2 steps clean with the ball and never moves. So
turned and ran into a brick wall.
That third step thing was a load of garbage. That actually was a catch and a fumble that went for a touchdown and would have totally changed the game. Then the Eagles got the call.
Chiefs fans should have been screaming if they lost that ball game based on that call. Yeah.
And then the Goddard one was clearly not literally there's a moment where they stop the replay and show both hands are off the ball and it's on his helmet. And then he picks up the foot with the right hand on it, but one hand on it isn't David Tyree. That's not a catch, because he then moves it to both hands. So if you're doing the fucking JFK Zapruder shit, then you have to take what you see. He did not have 2 feet down with a catch, But they gave him it, and they went on to score either a touchdown or a field goal on that drive. So I don't want to hear anything about the hold. That was clearly a hold. It wasn't even like, well, no, it was a hold. Whether you like it or not, it was a hold, and it stopped the guy's route. Like Mahomes threw it to a spot that McKinnon, who's fast as hell, would have got to because he had him beat by a mile, and the defensive back admitted it. So the refs were not outside of the fact that they botched all 3 calls. If you want to say that, okay, it was even then.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about this a zillion times over the years. You can't change the way you're officiating a game in the final minutes. I mean, I mean that tears up the integrity of everything you've done building up to that final minute. And if you're going to officiate the game, what we hear this another fable cliche: just be consistent. And if you're going to make a call at the beginning of the game, make that same call at the end of the game. I would have really been, appalled by it if it was a receiver away from the ball on the right side of the field, and then that would have been ugly. A guy that just ran a square out was a decoy. But this was a guy he was throwing to. He obviously had intention of throwing the ball to the outside there after the guy, ducked in and then ran like, an out pattern. And, he was clearly impeded by that early in the route, especially, and it would have called for not necessarily pass interference, but the holding call, which was a proper call there at the time. And at that point, who was the happiest man on the planet?
Oh, what
our good friend Sheldon G. Sheldon G. I mean, pressed his $200,000 bet on the Chiefs. I guess he had bought a half a point, was getting 2 points, and had to lay a little bit of a price on that. He had $210,000 to win 200 on that, and then he came back and pressed it later on and bet 200,000 on the Chiefs on the money line, and got a little price on that.
Jesus.
So the guy, I mean, I'm living vicariously through this guy.
Good for him.
Thinking, I know a guy that has $400,000 riding on this, and he's down 10 points at halftime and looking like he's about to get crushed like a grape.
Yep.
And and that Chad Henne might be coming into the game there because Mahomes looked like he had aggravated that ankle injury worse than it was when he originally injured it.
Yep.
When he got hobbled, and was hobbling off the field there just before the half. And as I said, to raucous cheering from all throughout. I mean, Harris Casino was rocking. I mean, absolutely shaking. I thought there was a Richter scale measurement as everybody, all these Eagle fans, as gracious as they are, were cheering and celebrating the fact that Mahomes was going to be carried off on a stretcher. Very appropriate, man. How was your party at the Lubitz household? How'd it go?
I went very low key. Shirley is coming back from India Wednesday, so had the parents over, and just my brother and my nephew came over, and we just hung out and watched the game, and I enjoyed it immensely. How was your Harrah's festival? It seemed like you had a lot of good time.
Oh, great. I mean, you know what? There was no place you could go at Harrah's and not have a good time with a big gathering of people that were interested in the game. They had the pool party, which we attended. That was a little bit of a junk food festival, as they had everything: pizza, Philly cheesesteaks, hot dogs. They really did a nice job on that. And I don't even think, and an open bar, and I believe tickets to this thing, even though we've got comped in there, were only like $50. And they were serving, regular, top shelf alcohol at the open bar. So if you had a couple of drinks, I mean, by casino standards, 2 drinks, you were already over the price of the ticket. Very nice job there. It was, great. And the presentation was fantastic. And then I ventured into, any number of other spots during the course of the second half. And everywhere you went, it was just a pleasure watching the game. It was absolutely fantastic. Plus, you could gamble while you were doing it. So that made it even better. Great time. Perfect spot. But a lot of deflated Philly fans. Yeah. And then, you get the Philadelphia news shows here in Atlantic City. And that was like a video version of our fabled Dolphins crying tower. I mean, they literally had reporters on the scene and in various sites all around Philadelphia. I mean, some are in Arizona, some are in Philly at various popular spots, and they may as well have just featured them with a gun to their head. No. They all looked like they were ready to blow their brains out. They're depressed that the story was not going to have a happy ending to it. The only guys getting the happy ending were the guys at the Asian massage parlor that were celebrating with Bob Kraft.
The guys are Kraft.
Well, we're not in this one, but I'm having a good time. Exactly. You know how Bobby is. Yeah. So it was a
that's
good time. I really an enjoyable Super Bowl too. I mean, after that series of blowouts in the '90s, you kind of had lost faith in the Super Bowl being a good game. As we said, it looked like the Hawaii Bowl where one team shows up and the other one is nervous. I thought, and maybe this came into play. I don't know. I think Kansas City just outplayed them badly in the second half.
Yep.
But the Super Bowl experience edge, I thought would be significant. And maybe it was to the extent that Kansas City, even after Philadelphia just shredded them on that first drive, came right back and responded. And then being down 10 at halftime, obviously didn't phase them because they came out in the second half and played very well. So, and dominated the second half of the game, getting 17 points in the fourth quarter. Real good ball game all the way around. Very exciting. And congratulations to the Chiefs. I'm glad we don't have to discuss the negative legacy stuff with Patrick Mahomes for another 5 years. In case he doesn't win another Super Bowl, because everybody would have said, oh, well, Montana never lost. Michael Jordan never lost. But Mahomes is 1-2. And he had played like shit in previous Super Bowls. As Brandon Lang told us on our podcast on Believe, he had one good quarter out of 8. And had a 57 quarterback rating. Really had not distinguished himself, even though he had won one of the 2 Super Bowls. But winning 2 out of 3 and not looking like they're going anywhere anytime soon. I would think Philadelphia comes back with a very good team again next year. I'm not sure, who's leaving, but or who they won't be able to retain. But wow! I mean, they were clearly the best team in the NFC, and did nothing to disgrace themselves by the way they conducted themselves in the Super Bowl game. Although they did make a few serious blunders at different times. And, therein lies the difference. Mistakes, the usual stuff pops up, mistakes, penalties, and turnovers.
The Eagles aren't going anywhere. And I don't know if I was wrong or right about Jalen Hurts, but the idea of just stopping him from running isn't that easy because he did whatever the hell he wanted.
He was brilliant. I mean, except for the fumble. The guy, I mean, he easily, was going to be the MVP. And, he was brilliant, except that the final play was a little bit of a dud. I don't know what chance they had on that, but outside of that and the fumble, I mean, Hurts looked great in the game.
Yeah, Hurts look good. The Eagles aren't going anywhere because they're built from the insides out, so they are deep and talented. And they look. In the end, it's funny for all the fat fuck talk from Brandon Lang. Andy Reid was a difference in that game. I mean, what he did, their defense didn't stop playing the Eagles. He just out-schemed them. They couldn't do anything from the middle of the first quarter on in the first half. And for all those people that saying there's no halftime adjustments, well, I guess Super Bowl is different because the second half, the Chiefs offense was entirely different. They moved the ball around. It looked like the Warriors, the way that Mahomes was distributing it. And that's all Reid. Like, to me, that was Reid just going mad scientist. I don't know exactly what he did because I'm not a football analyst. I'm not freaking Randy Moss or whatever, but he definitely, their offense looked very different. And Sirianni was in his second year as an NFL coach. And it showed. Like, by the end of that game, Sirianni didn't get outclassed. Just Reid looked like the guy that's the second best coach in the NFL right now. And everyone that had questions of Andy Reid in the big games, he answered them. He and Mahomes, both of them played out of their mouth. Mahomes in that second half was masterful, and Andy Reid was tremendous. He literally died. When you get guys running wide open on a 5-yard pass inside the red zone, that doesn't happen. Like, it's hard to score inside the red zone. Like, it was easy. Twice they did that where they had guys running wide open. That's all play design. And Sirianni in the second half, it seemed they struggled a little bit. The Chiefs figured them out, and it was the opposite. And just Reid put on a masterclass, but the Eagles are going nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common to install the Super Bowl contenders, win or lose, as favorites to win the game again next year.
Yeah.
I don't know what you see, that you wouldn't like about the Chiefs. And Philadelphia, but for, some mistakes in the second half, I was really surprised, too. Philadelphia was able to twice draw Kansas City off sides in crucial situations.
Yep.
That was unusual for a team that has that kind of experience. But fairly evenly matched all the way through. I do believe maybe Rihanna really was the difference in the ballgame. Because that atrocious halftime show allowed Andy Reid to come up with something. Did I see this, though? This struck me as very odd. I saw on a crawl, is it possible that Eric Bieniemy is going to leave for another offensive coordinator job with another team? Why on earth would he do that? That would deflate and refute all of the theories we had that he's given up on going for the Gene Upshaw, Rooney Rule, Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes, Rooney Rule tour, and doesn't go on these head coaching interviews anymore because he's going to inherit the job from Andy Reid, who says he's going nowhere. Terry Bradshaw was a bit of an embarrassment after the game. I know, does he now suffer from dementia as well as some of the other ailments that he had? I mean, the guy just wins the Super Bowl. And, he sounded like he'd been drinking since the halftime show himself because he tells Andy Reid, hey, why don't you waddle on over here?
He says, waddle over here, big guy. He says it to his face. It's like our dream.
Oh, my God. I was asked to mention this by the lovely and talented one, even though she probably would want to distance herself from this kind of theorizing. But he may as well have asked him the question that we've been trying to figure out for years, and that is that a restaurant, a Chinese food restaurant menu that you have as the play chart?
I thought he was going to.
And did you draw that little, begin to go in motion and then go back to the side you were coming from? Did you draw that 2-touchdown play, right there around the Mugu guy picture? Then he told him to have a cheeseburger to celebrate.
Yes, he did.
And he asked him some other really stupid question, which, and you're thinking to yourself, what happened to, I know it's one of those moments where, people ask really dumb questions, and they have nothing to say, like, hey, how does it feel to have completed this journey? And all of a sudden you thought you turned into the Bachelorette, but that I thought was some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was classic.
It's just an odd approach by an interviewer. I mean, maybe he has a great relationship with Reid and they tease each other all the time about being fat, but kind of insulting there, I thought, and an odd line of questioning for somebody to ask a coach who had just been presented the Lombardi Trophy for the second time with the Chiefs.
Well, it just sounded like a segment we would do. Like I was actually both impressed and confused. I'm like, is he doing this out loud?
Let's not talk about the game at all. Like, what the hell you told these guys at halftime, and how did you draw up these plays? So let's just, talk about the fact that you're a fat slob. Surprised he didn't bring up his kid that's in prison and the guy that committed suicide. Unbelievable.
All right. Well, Dave, we appreciate you waking up with us. Hopefully you can join us the next couple of days. Just recap your AC trips. Everyone always loves to hear your survival in the casino junket. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to update you, next couple of days for sure. I mean, and I appreciate you hanging in there. Probably would have been prohibitive for me to set up the computer in here. I don't know that I don't know that I'm capable of that from a technical standpoint, even though it involves like plugging one thing into a socket. But, yeah, no, it was great being with you. I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was fantastic. I hope a lot of people did. If you took our recommendation, you bet the Chiefs. If you took everybody else's recommendation, you got buried there with the Philadelphia Eagles at the end. But, a very entertaining Super Bowl all the way around. And, just all you can say is that was a, fitting conclusion of what I thought was one of the more entertaining NFL seasons. But with all the complaints about the NFL and how high and mighty they become, one of the more entertaining NFL seasons I've witnessed. I watched a lot of football this year, as a lot of you guys did. Yep. I really thought it was a great year, and that was a perfect way to cap it off.
That was a great way to end a great year and a great way to start our Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday. Deep, man, we appreciate it, and we'll hopefully talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you a buzz tomorrow. Thanks, Lubie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. The one and only, the incomparable Jeff Defo. Sorry for the technical issues to start there. I didn't have everything plugged in. It wasn't even a late night, and I did this last week, so stuff happens. But we did get to hear from the one and only, the great Jeff DeForest. Coming up next, we'll talk to the agent of the stars, Mr. Brett Tessler. I don't think he had any players in the game, but he had a keen eye on the game, and we'll talk to him about the flag heard around the world and another Super Bowl tightly contested here. The Defo Show with no Defo. He just had some Defo, so we at least had a little Defo. And Lubie here on South Florida Live. Brett Tessler coming up next.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously. Friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
The simple pleasures of this job, the way a stadium sounds when one of my players performs well on the field, the way we are meant to protect them in health and in injury. Less, more attention, caring for them, caring for ourselves in the games too.
The agent to the stars, the one and only Brett Tessler.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Defo Show. We had a little bit of Defo there. I am Lubie. To start your week off after a very scintillating Super Bowl, we're talking with a man who knows the NFL very well, represents many a great talent throughout the NFL, and joins us each and every week here. The one and only Brett Tessler. Good morning, Tess, man. How you doing?
Hey, Lubie, what's happening, buddy?
I am doing well. All right, so before we get into any of it, just will ask you this. What was your impression of the game? It seemed one-sided in the first half, and then was a rugged affair to finish to the end. What were your take on just the overall Super Bowl 54?
I thought it was a great game. I mean, you can't ask for anything more than a game that kind of comes down to the wire. Both teams are trading punches. It was a tale of two halves. I mean, I was sure that after the first half that Philadelphia was going to win the game. I mean, the way that their offensive line was just completely manhandling the Chiefs' defensive line, especially on short yardage situations. I mean, it almost seemed unfair with all the third and shorts, even fourth and shorts, that they were just able to easily pick up. I mean, you saw Kelsey getting low. I mean, everybody knows in football that low man wins. And the Chiefs' offensive line was just doing an amazing job submarining the Eagles' offensive line. Yeah, the Eagles line was just submarining the Chiefs' D line. And if it came down to a situation where it was going to be a 2-point conversion anywhere beyond the one they got, I think they could have done it all day. I mean, I think they probably could have gone for 100 third and ones, fourth and ones, and picked up 100 out of 100. I mean, there was no indication that the Chiefs line could do anything in those situations. So I just felt like the Eagles were going to control the game. I thought Hurts, every time he used his feet, had huge success. So I just assumed that would be the case in the second half. But on the other hand, like I said, I don't want to be the guy that says I told you so, but obviously a million people asked me over the last week or two, including you guys last week, who I thought was going to win. I said I felt like the Chiefs were going to win a close game. I said I thought it would be a high-scoring game, and I turned out to be right on both of those accounts. But I also, as I was watching the game, was saying, you know what? I don't think you could count on either of these defenses to stop the opposing offense. This game's going to come down to who makes a mistake, or a crucial turnover, or like a big return on special teams. And again, both of those things ended up happening, and that ended up being the biggest difference in the game. I mean, those teams would have traded punches to this morning if they were still playing. It was just that turnover and almost a second one that ended up getting reversed to incomplete. And then, of course, that big punt return. Those were the two key plays of the game.
Well, and what's interesting is so often, like you see a game going one way and then halftime happens. And in this racket, we always talk about halftime adjustments. And a few weeks ago, Peyton Manning sort of mocked that on their Manning cast, saying that's not a real thing. You have literally, by the time you get back there, you grab some water, the second half starts. That might be true in a regular season game, but in the Super Bowl, where it's a 30-minute concert and they have 5 minutes to get off, 5 minutes to get on, it's like 40 minutes of halftime. And it seemed like Andy Reid and his staff took full advantage of it, because the Chiefs we saw on both sides of the ball in the first half was not the Chiefs we saw in the second half. They started to blitz more. They were getting after Hurts. They weren't letting him run. And then on top of that, offensively, they were spreading the ball around in a way we didn't see them in the first half. And to me, it showed all those that question Andy Reid as this great coach because he struggles in the big game. I don't know if he put him to bed, but he answered the questions to me. Like in that second half, what we saw from the Chiefs was a totally different team. And I don't know how you don't give credit to Andy Reid.
I thought this game may be Andy Reid's finest moment.
Yep.
He did everything properly, managed it right to the last second. I guess in retrospect, the only thing I might have rethought was kicking that ball deep, kicking the ball out of the end zone with the 8 seconds left or whatever it is instead of squibbing it, because ultimately there was really only going to be time for one play. And so with that being said, I think, everything ended well, but momentum is a very, very real thing in sports. And anybody who says it isn't is out of their mind. And the bottom line is the Eagles had it in the first half and the Chiefs were able to get it in the second half and ultimately win the game because of it. But it really was one of the better Super Bowls I've ever seen. The only thing you hope for in any Super Bowl when, casual fans are watching the game that, may really get into football because, wow, this is really compelling. This is very exciting. Whatever the case may be, very captivating. You think about some Super Bowls like going back many years, Washington, Denver, and that game was over before it began. That game was over 10 minutes in. Same thing with the 49ers Chargers. Same thing with, Denver Colts, maybe?
Well, Denver Falcons was a joke.
Yeah, Denver Falcons. Yeah, that's what I meant, not Colts, obviously. Yeah, so, you just hope that it's not one of those games. And in a game where I happen to not be representing an active player, as a fan, I myself want to see a good game. And I thought anybody who watched that game last night got everything out of it they could have been hoping for. And for anybody to too strongly suggest that the Eagles got robbed with that call at the end, look, I mean, there was calls earlier in the game that were worse than that that the Eagles got away with. And so I think when you look at the entire game, I think there was calls both ways that could have been called, that weren't, that were called, that couldn't have been. And I just think, when you weigh it all out, it evens out. For those conspiracists saying that, it's rigged or it's fixed, I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's been the case all year. I just think for most of the season, officiating's just legitimately been that bad. But in this particular instance, I don't think it's the case. It's a hold. And the player who committed it said after the game, quote, "I held him." So, I mean, I don't know what more people could want than that. I've been a huge Greg Olsen fan. I think he's been really good this year. I've been thinking it's really going to be unfair when Tom Brady steps in and takes that spot. But to be honest with you, I was a little disappointed in Olsen last night. You can make your statement that you felt like maybe it was a play that shouldn't be called in that situation and leave it alone. But he just went on and on and on and on. And to people listening to the game, I think they could be influenced by the announcers if you hear a guy just, so vehemently insisting on something. And so for that reason, I thought it was very unfortunate. I thought it was unfair. I thought it was disrespectful to the Chiefs. And in this particular instance, I thought it was disrespectful to the official. I think this is an instance where they got it right. And I think that the team that deserved to win the game won the game. And so I don't think you could ask for a better ending to any season ever.
Well, look, and Defo and I were talking about this. If it's on the other side and it doesn't affect the play at all, yes, to me, that's sort of ticky-tack to call it, especially in that moment in the Super Bowl. But that wasn't the case. Like, the dude turned the receiver around early in the route, so that already threw up the timing. And then when the receiver regained it and still had a chance to maybe make a play, he grabs him. Like, he knew he was beat twice, and it was a smart play because the refs don't always see that. So it's worth taking a shot. But if the refs see it, they have to call it. Like, I don't understand the Joel Klatz and the Herb Streets and the Olsen on the broadcast. Like, what are you talking about? He held him, and he was the guy that was targeted clearly the entire play.
And furthermore, Lubie, that was not a game deciding play. Now, I think some of the plays earlier in the game were a little more suspect. I thought when that Chiefs player got held earlier in the game, that one was really egregious, and it ended up sliding. I thought when they ruled that Eagles player on that huge third down after the replay of the down, when Andy Reid finally challenged it, I thought that might have been a mistake to not challenge it, but in the end, they ended up doing it. I don't know how they ruled that a catch.
Yeah, how is that a catch?
So that, so that
I don't get that.
That was one of the most turning point plays in the entire game. So, this was just an instance of it just took a little time away from the Eagles in the end. Obviously, the Chiefs were still making that kick with or without that penalty. It's not like they went ahead and scored a touchdown there after it. They kicked the same field goal they were going to kick with or without that penalty.
Yep.
The Eagles were still going to have to go a very, very long way to try to get a very, very low probability touchdown after the fact. Okay, so instead of one play, maybe they would have had two. Based on the way that last play went, there's no indication to me that they would have scored anyway. So again, it's just one of those things where, look, I get it. The officiating has been extremely polarizing, extremely controversial, and point blank, it's been extremely bad most of the year. But hey, you know what? That's for the league to figure out. It's an issue, especially with gambling now being as widespread as it is, legal in most places. It's one of those things where in order to maintain the public trust in our league, they're either going to have to try to figure out new ways to review plays, new plays that are allowed to be reviewed, or just get younger, better, full-time, more highly compensated referees, because in these referees' defense, yes, the game does get even faster. It does get even quicker over time. And frankly, it's just, it's one of these things where I think, the rules as they're written at an executive level, at a legal level, are so absolutely difficult to understand, difficult to officiate, that it makes things much harder for these guys. I like the old days where if a guy possessed the ball, got 2 feet down, catch.
Yep.
So that play yesterday where the player ended up getting hit after he, quickly had possession and, would have been a game ending at that point, touchdown.
Yep.
They end up reversing that and calling it an incomplete pass. The kind of football that I grew up watching, that's a catch. And it should be a catch because, again, the guy has possession, got 2 feet down. And so now the way the rules are written is a guy has to have possession, get 2 feet down, make a football move, take 3 breaths, blink 10 times.
Backflip.
I mean, it just gets to a point where this is what happens when, rules are being defined by suits and lawyers, and in many cases, people who never played the game, and people, frankly, who don't really have the best interest of the game from a fan standpoint at heart. A lot of things that you're seeing these days are being driven by legal matters, health matters, which I'm all in favor of, protecting guys. But there's some points where, the game of football is the game of football. And if you start trying to take too many things out or trying to over officiate things in terms of what's a clean hit, now they're talking about the thing where guys are, wrapping guys up and essentially using their weight to bring them down. Where you've seen a couple guys get ankles, twisted up underneath. That's going to be a big discussion this offseason. And that's really all these officials need. That's all these officials need moving forward. There's more things to try to evaluate out there, as if they're not having a hard enough time.
God.
So I think the league has a major, major problem that they need to figure out, and they need to figure it out fast.
Tess, I know you got to go, man. Thank you so much. And hopefully we get to talk to you again next week and head into the offseason a little bit as the draft, I guess, is on the horizon.
Good thing about football, always stuff going on. Got the combine coming up. pro days after that. The draft will be here before we know it. So always glad to be on with you guys.
One only Brett Tessler. We'll talk to him next week. Brett, thank you so much.
Take care, Lubie.
All righty. He couldn't say better than I could. I couldn't say better myself. That's literally how I felt about all of it. I hate the refs getting in the way, but I also don't. I don't know what you want. Like, you understand, if you don't throw a flag, that you're telling the defense, yeah, you can just tackle the guy, which they had. That's what football was. That's why scores until Dan Marino got involved were nothing, because you could just manhandle people as a defender, and it made the game slow to a crawl. So they instituted more and more rules to put the defense at bay, to allow the offense to be more free-flowing. And you've seen the game freaking explode. And that's the game they want. I like defense. I'm okay with some physicality, but that's not the game they want. So you can't call a game for 55 minutes. Go. Be free. If the defender does anything illegal, we're going to call it. And then with 4 minutes left, go, now we're not calling anything. What? Like, how do you, first of all, for the officials who are not good, how do you have them do that? Second, as fans watching a game, like, I don't understand how you would expect that to make any sense at all. So I understand if you're on the Eagles and you have a lot of money on the Eagles, you don't want that called. It was blatant. And it was smart. And I'm not even mad at the guy for doing it. It's what he had to do. He got beat. And they were Mahomes threw to the exact, I get Defo or Tessler didn't know if he'd caught it. He would have caught it. Jerry McKinnon is fast as hell. Okay, or Pacheco, whoever the hell it was, whatever receiver it was one of their fast receivers. Mahomes knew where he was throwing it. He threw to the spot where the guy was going to be. He got held twice. Like, come on. Like, if they don't call that, then you're telling the defense, yeah, you might as well just tackle like it's a freaking Hail Mary. The Hail Mary, I understand, because it's a scrum and there's 10 guys in the end zone, and how are you going to throw pass interference on 10 guys? But that wasn't that. The guy had him beat easy. He turns him. Okay, he has his arm, turns him. Then the guy gets away from it and is actually running and may be able to get there, and he tugs him. He knew he got beat, and if he gets beat, it's a touchdown with a minute left in the game, and they're down by a touchdown with no timeouts, having to move the ball quickly, which they hadn't done all game. Even when they threw the 2 long balls, the drive still took minutes. Like, they hadn't scored in a minute the entire game. So he knew what he was doing. It was a smart play on his part. You don't always get that called, so it was worth a shot. The ref saw it. You have to call it. It was blatant. Like, put it this way, Mahomes isn't overthrowing a guy by 10 yards on that play. That was clear once you saw the replay. So you had to call that. And those other 2 calls were atrocious. And they went against the Chiefs for the Eagles. And they ended up allowing scores. I think the Eagles scored on both of the drives where they had those horrendous calls. Like, again, like I was saying with Defo, the idea of the third step is because that's your football move, like Brett was joking. Usually it takes you a step or 2 to gather the ball, so you have to have the ball and make a step. But that wasn't that play. The receiver caught it clean without moving, then took 2 steps, and then got hit. The ball never moved, and it was a clean fumble. That was a fumble. They called it a no catch, and the Eagles ended up getting the ball, and I think they scored right after that. Then, the Eagles had the ball. The Eagles, instead of giving up a touchdown to the Chiefs, that would have put them up, and they probably don't look back because they were starting to dominate at that point. It felt like that changed everything. It wasn't a touchdown. The Eagles, I think, went down and scored. Then the Goddard catch was clearly not a catch. There's literally a point where both hands are here, not on the ball. Then he puts one arm on the ball as he's raising the other foot. He doesn't have it clean because he then has to put 2 hands on it. So he's showing you he needs 2 hands to have a catch. He didn't have 2 hands on it until he had the left foot down and no other foot went down. Like, why have replay if you're not going to use it right? That wasn't a catch. And they went on and scored after that. So I don't want to hear it. And so the refs were totally wrong on that. But it was okay because it went the Eagles' way. The other one, the refs were right. And it went the Chiefs' way. It wasn't like it was a Chiefs love fest by the refs or the Eagles. Like, the refs actually stayed pretty much out of that game. Okay, but if there's blatant things that will change the game, you have to call it. And I'm sorry. And I hate refs. And I'm the first guy. My buddy out in California follows me on Twitter just to make fun of me for when I bitch about refs. I do it all the time. I know I do it. I admit it. And again, we know whatever the refs do, usually it's not solely the ref's fault. Last night was not a ref thing. The Chiefs were in field goal range. They were going to kick a field goal. The Eagles would have had like a minute 20 or something to go the length of the field with no timeouts. Yeah, all they would have needed was a field goal, but still, like, they, outside of the 2 big heaves, they didn't get a lot of chunk yardage in that game. The scores they had, they were moving down the field. So, I mean, I don't know. It didn't change the game at all. The Eagle guy knew he got beat, was going to give up the game-winning touchdown, and made a smart play, and he got called for it. And Bradbury admitted it right after the game. He's like, yeah, I held him. Like, I thought I may get away with it. I didn't. I held him. The Chiefs, in that second half, did what I was waiting for them to do. Andy Reid outsmarted Nick Sirianni. Patrick Mahomes, even with a bum ankle, is the best player on the planet and when it comes to football. And he now has his second Super Bowl, so now you can put him in that next class, above an Aaron Rodgers and above a Brett Favre and in that Elway. Because people want to make him the best quarterback ever. You can't do that yet. It's Brady and then Montana to me. But you can put him in that next group. You can now put, for a guy that's 26, it sounds freaking weird to talk legacy. He's been to 5 straight AFC Championship games. He's been to 3 Super Bowls, and he's won 2. And last night, it wasn't he had a bad game. He played great that entire game. That entire game, Patrick Mahomes played out of his mind. Like, he did what he did. He kept them in the game in the first half, and then he won them the game in the second half. And there's only a handful of guys in the history of this sport that you could say have done that. So it was a great game that finished interesting. But again, you have these convoluted fucking rules. So like Brett said, he's right. It makes it hard to, they're not full-time as it is. They're older a lot of the time. So it doesn't make it easy to follow plays that are happening at the speed of light. And then on top of that, you make the rule, you try to make them right so much that you make them insane. Like, both of those were the opposite of what the refs called when the Eagles made the plays. Like, that was definitely a catch, and that was definitely not a catch. So they got it wrong. Okay, so there you go. I don't know. I thought it was a great game. It was very interesting. The halftime show, I didn't think the halftime show was so bad. I thought her outfit was strange. I thought the outfits that people were wearing were strange. They don't know what they were going for. I did not know she was pregnant, but it felt like she was. And interesting to know that they're like, oh shit, she looked pregnant as hell, and she wasn't dancing at all. Why was she acting like that? Let's make sure everyone knows why. That's why. Like, she was pregnant. Okay, so, and I guess it's somewhat recent. I congratulations to her. I like Rihanna, those songs, so I was cool with the songs. I didn't understand the show at all. I didn't understand the outfits at all, but that's what they seem to do when they do these crazy. Look, Beyonce had a whole thing and it looked like a war zone. I mean, I'm not an artist, so I know when it comes to putting out art, musicians are always interesting about that. So I'm not going to judge that too much. I thought it was solid. I liked it. I liked Rihanna, and it was cool to see her back performing. And congratulations on her, I guess, second pregnancy, or I don't know what number it is. But I liked the game. I thought it was a good time. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate Defo joining us. I appreciate Brett Tessler joining us, the agent of the stars, as we call him. Coming up next, going to talk with Antwan Staley of the New York Daily News. He is Jets beat writer, but he also covers the NFL as well. He's covered the Dolphins in the past. He's covered the Canes, Florida State, Oregon, the Carolina Panthers. So football is in this man's blood, and I always enjoy talking to him. We'll talk about the Super Bowl because definitely that's on everyone's mind today. But also the offseason is now officially here. We've already seen coaches hired, coaches fired. And we've heard movement of quarterbacks, and he's in the New York area. One specific quarterback has been rumored heavily to be heading to the New York area. So we will definitely get into that and so much more here, the Defo Show. No Defo right now, but you did have Defo earlier. And if you missed our conversation with Defo, once I figured out the technical aspects, because I had a little issue, but we figured it out. Once I did, got lots of Defo. He sounded good. He doesn't sound broke. So AC so far has gone well. So we'll get more of Defo tomorrow morning, and we'll get him Wednesday morning. And coming up, don't forget, at 12 o'clock, we will have Mike Mayo's Lunchbox. I think we're going to have Chris Perkins joining us as in that Defo chair. Perkins, a guy who's covered the Dolphins for years, covered the Heat, covered South Florida sports, but also covered the national sports scene. He's been to, I presume, a Super Bowl or two. He was not at this Super Bowl, but I'm sure he got a keen eye, and he's a foodie himself, when only Chris Perkins of the South Florida Sun Sentinel. So Mike Mayo and I will have Perkins joining us as a co-host at 12 o'clock on Mike Mayo's Lunchbox right here. You should check out, by the way, I'm not saying it's not disgusting because I get disgusted in person watching it, but I've made it a thing on our SoFly Live TikTok and Instagram almost daily, at least during the week, because we go out and he eats a lot. and he eats the way he eats. Mike Mayo in action with food in his mouth. It's a sight for a man who is and he is a renowned. Like, I've seen it myself when we walk in these restaurants, and we do it at least once a week, some weeks 2 to 3 times a week. I don't know if they shudder because he's not a jerk, but they definitely are like, oh my God, Mayo's here. And oh my God, what are we going to do? Are you ready? Like, it's very weird how when he walks in, they all hop to it. You know, like when like the regional manager would come in, like if you worked in retail or something. Like, that's Mayo. When he walks in, they're all like, oh my God, are you ready? You ready? And then he eats. And then it's like, oh, that's weird. Like, for him to be that highly respected for his food opinion, which is he's opened my eyes a lot to different things. But then he eats, and he eats like a 6-year-old at he eats at like a 1 or 2-year-old at their first birthday party. Like, it's a weird combination. So, you should watch those videos. I put them up there. It's like the train wreck kind of a thing where you want to look away, but you can't. And Andy noticed this a long time ago, one of our friends and our staunch listeners and viewers. The size of his mouth and what he can do with it. He's not as big a man as we joke about he is. Like, I've seen like friggin' football players in Shaq that are like 7 feet, 300 pounds, and they don't do with their mouth what he like. Those sandwiches, you're like, oh, that's pretty big. No, I've been there in person. The muffaletta that Tom T put together was like 2 to 3 sandwiches in one. A human being should not be able to open their mouth that big. Like, they just shouldn't. Like, it's not physically. The only animal I've ever seen, and I joke about it on the Instagram, the TikTok, again, at SoFly Live, is a snake. Because, you know, snakes, a lot of the time, will eat like that. They start with a little mouse, then a rat, then they go to like rabbits. And they don't get that much bigger because their fucking mouth can do like some crazy shit, and the jaw like cracks open and opens to a weird ass size. I've seen Mike Mayo do that. Like, his mouth's this big, and then he's eating a sandwich this big. It's like, what the hell? So I'm telling you, it may be a little, you know, not appetizing because you're looking for the sophisticated food critic who talks about the consistency with language you would only hear at Harvard. And then he eats, and it's like, I don't think he's eaten in weeks. Give him food. He hasn't eaten in weeks. So if I were you, I would definitely check it out because it's something to behold. And I'm sure he'll do it at 12. He seems to do it every day now. And I appreciate it because it gives us content, as they say. But it isn't for the faint of heart. So check that out at 12 o'clock. And I appreciate... Oh, see, only you, Joanne. I love it. It's great. It's disgusting, but it's, again, like a train wreck. We should look away, but we can't. So at SoFly Live on Instagram and TikTok. Check out Mike Mayo in action. Check him out today at 12. And when we get back, you'll have Antwan Staley, again, New York Jets beat writer for the New York Daily News. And he covers the NFL as well. And he's covered college football. So, no, Cecilia, I love you. We're not doing that today. Coming back, more of the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie. And we'll have sports writer Antwan Staley right here on South Florida Live.
Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style. And you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
Hey folks, Tony Segreto here. You know, since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of Bowl School. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapists, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place, and that one place is Catholic Health Services.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
We now return to the Defo Show right here on.
All right, welcome back to the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie right now here on South Florida Live. This gentleman has been coast to coast, north to south, and now resides in the Northeast, the Big Apple, covering the New York Jets and the NFL, the New York Daily News. Our good friend, we've been talking to this gentleman a long time, so happy for all of his success. One and only Antwan Staley joins us right now. Good morning, Antwan. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. All righty. So you are a big event guy, small event guy, a foodie guy. I'll start there with you, since at 12 o'clock we do Mike Mayo's Lunchbox, and you're a guy that I love checking you out on Twitter and all the socials, because you definitely have your own food opinion. What is a big game party for Antwan Staley when it comes to food?
I guess it depends on the event. I know for Super Bowl, it's always like, I made wings yesterday, and
Nice.
I had like Philly. I feel like the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, so I had some Philly cheesesteak sliders. So it just depends on the event and maybe who's playing and things of that nature too. But so it can kind of vary from event to event. But for football, it always starts with wings for me. But like I say, it could be anything, to be honest with you.
Well, you're a Carolina guy at heart. I feel like, and it's funny because we talked about this, the KC being there, KC barbecue, but those in the South, their barbecue, Carolina, Texas, is a very different kind of barbecue. Are you rub barbecue sauce off, or are you barbecue sauce on?
I like the sauce, because I think it just brings like another element to it. But also, for kids, like I think Kansas City barbecue is a bit overrated. Like I think a lot of people think I think Texas, that's probably where it starts for me.
Yep.
Texas barbecue is probably number one for me, and then it's easy to say North Carolina because I am from there, but I probably would have that like second to third. Like I think Tennessee barbecue is very underrated as well. Like especially Memphis, they specialize in it. I think Alabama has some pretty good barbecue too. I think a lot of people kind of sleep on them as well. So yeah, I definitely think Kansas City barbecue is good, but I don't think it's like the best out there like some people think it is.
I like it, but yes, most barbecue aficionados, and they will say they're not turning their nose up as they're turning their nose up at Kansas City barbecue. All right, so let's get into the game last night. I'm sure you were riveted by it. It was highly contested until the end, and then there was some people in an uproar. Before we get to the call that everyone had some kind of an opinion on, what were your thoughts on the game at large?
Oh, I think it was a great game. I thought it was just tremendous, and both teams going blow for blow and neck, and I thought Jalen Hurts played out of his mind. I think easily could have won the MVP award if everything had been reversed as well. The man's definitely going to get paid, and he should get paid this offseason, especially in the last year of his deal. And I think Philly is in a good spot moving forward. But in the end, like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs just do their thing again. I know some people they might not have had the most talented team. I thought the Eagles team from top to bottom was better, but the fact of the matter is when you have a generational quarterback like that, you can win any game in this league, and I think we saw that last night, even if he's, less than 100%.
Well, and I've been tough on Jalen Hurts because I remember him at Alabama, and he was a great athlete and a decent quarterback. And then you saw him go to Oklahoma, and you really saw Lincoln Riley bring out the passing abilities of Jalen Hurts, but I still wasn't sure what he'd be in the NFL. And I've given him a lot of guff. And I was like, look, the way the Niners held him in check, I said, that's the blueprint. Well, yeah, the Niners are the best defense in football. And they may have a generation, you talk about generational, they may have one of those, oh, wow, this is a defense we didn't think we'd get again, and now we have it kind of defense. So, yes, if they can do it, that doesn't mean everyone else can. And you saw the Chiefs' defense is solid. It's played pretty well. And Jalen Hurts did whatever he wanted last night. I mean, he was spectacular. And I've been really tough on the guy, but whether it's his legs or his arm, he did what he had to do, and he kept them in that game, even when it felt like the Chiefs were starting to pull away. The Eagles went down and got a big touchdown that really showed you this game wasn't going anywhere. So yeah, he's not only getting paid, but it feels like he is the guy in Philadelphia. And Patrick Mahomes is who he thought he was. He struggled in Super Bowls. He did have an injury, but you saw with any offensive line in front of him, which he didn't have versus the Bucs a couple years ago, the guy's scary, and he did it all the way to the end, even on a bum ankle. And I think, and I've talked about this with Defo and our other guests and NFL agent Brett Tessler, Andy Reid, who's had some questionable moments in big games, where it was the Eagles in all those NFC title games, the Eagles in that Super Bowl versus the Patriots, the Chiefs versus the Bucs, where you saw their offensive line was struggling, but Andy Reid did not change the game plan at all. Andy Reid's had moments of struggling in big games. Last night, it seemed like that was his masterclass. Like what they did in that second half, where they turned everything around, and the Eagles, one of the second best defense, if not at times the best defense in football, looked lost, and the Chiefs went straight down and scored 3 straight touchdowns, was something you really haven't seen the Eagles face, and it was something we haven't seen from Andy Reid in a big game, if ever.
Yeah, I think what it boiled down to, I thought the Eagles did a great job. I mean, their best defense last night against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs was keeping them off the field. They kept the ball in 22 minutes, and I thought that was just tremendous. And that's part of the reason why Mahomes only had less than 200 yards passing for the entire game. And then second half, they got the ball first, went down and scored. And, the fourth quarter, it was kind of reminiscent of, the game against the 49ers in the Super Bowl years ago in Miami that, the fourth quarter they were down and they just turned it around there. And they got a big kickoff return, a big punt return from, Kadarius Toney. I thought really set everything up, and it's kind of changed the momentum completely of the game. But yeah, I thought Andy Reid did just a tremendous job as play calling, and Patrick Mahomes again, ball ankle and all, ended up running for that 36-yard run, and really set up everything. And obviously, the James Bradbury call. I hate that it kind of came down to it. I understand it. I definitely don't think. And I thought the ball was uncatchable, to be honest with you. But, yeah, it definitely was some holding there. But it kind of took a luster. It made it anticlimactic at the end of the game. And I hate the game. It had to be decided in that fashion. But, the fact of the matter is he did hold it. The refs called it. And, the Chiefs just held the ball. And, kicking that short field goal. And that was the game.
Yeah, look, that's one thing I can't fight, and I've been screaming about that call that I thought it was definitely legitimate. It soured the end. Like they were going to probably get a field goal no matter what. It was going to be 4th and 8, I guess, and it was a chip shot, but there'd be like a minute 20 to a minute 30 on the clock as opposed to 8 seconds. So yes, it changed everything. That last drive would have been very different with a minute 20 or whatever, as opposed to 8 seconds or 6 seconds, whatever it was, when the Eagles actually got the ball. And that would have added a lot more drama, and I totally understand. But like you said, Bradbury admitted he held him. So, I mean, I understand, yes, someone in our chat line said there's holding every play. Sure. But like Defo and I talked about, look, if the holding happened on the other side of the field, in that moment, you can't throw the flag. I totally agree. But it happened to the guy that was clearly being targeted and clearly beat the defender. So what do you want? Like, what are the refs there to do but call that? It sucked that it ended that way. But the Chiefs have their second Super Bowl in 5 seasons, I guess. Mahomes now is a 2-time Super Bowl champion. It puts him in a different class as a quarterback. What was your takeaway from that going into the offseason for these two teams? Because it feels like neither of these teams is going anywhere.
I mean, the Chiefs are, as long as Mahomes is there and healthy, they continue to be there. So, but the AFC is always just stacked. I mean, Cincinnati easily could have won the AFC championship if not for, the boneheaded call, another controversial call at the end of the game, too. So, yeah, I think Cincinnati will definitely be there, especially, getting their offensive line healthy, and I'm sure they'll improve that area as well. Buffalo, I definitely think, they have some things to shore up there, but I probably would pick them third, but behind, Cincinnati and Kansas City there. So yeah, the AFC is going to be stacked. And we'll see, beyond that, what changes happen in the free agency. But I definitely think it starts with, definitely the Chiefs, Bengals, and Buffalo, at the top in the AFC. The NFC is interesting because you definitely have the Eagles there. I definitely think they're gonna stick around there. The 49ers, we'll see, with their quarterback situation. It's gonna look like, I imagine Trey Lance is gonna come back, and I think he'll eventually reclaim that starting job that he ended up losing, of course, when he got hurt at the beginning of the regular season. But yeah, I definitely think him and Brock Purdy will go at it, and I think he'll probably end up eventually winning because they end up trading up so many picks to end up getting him. So I definitely think the 49ers should be right there. But then after that, it's kind of, I don't know. Minnesota, you kind of want to believe that Minnesota may eventually turn the corner, but their defense was just awful at times last year for the most part. So, but yes, there's a lot of questions there with after San Francisco and the Eagles in the NFC. But yeah, I definitely think both of those teams are still going to be in contention next year. And but yeah, the NFC I definitely think is a bit more of a question mark as opposed to some of the top teams, as opposed to the AFC, where I feel like it's very top heavy. And then you still, AFC, you still got Justin Herbert and the Chiefs. I mean, the Chargers are going to come, and we saw what Jacksonville was able to do this upcoming year with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. So yeah, AFC is stacked, and it's going to continue to be strong.
And one team and one quarterback you didn't mention is a quarterback that we're getting a lot of news out your way, up there in the Northeast, out of the Big Apple, the New York Jets. Won both rookies of the year, defense and offense. Their defense became one of the best defenses in football by the end of the year. Their offense has a lot of talent. If they can get Breece Hall back, he was showing signs of being one of the better backs in football as a rookie, second-round pick. They need a freaking quarterback. Well, there's a guy in the Midwest that is ticketed to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah, he's become a little strange off the field, but on the field, he still seems to have lots and lots of talent. He's just bitter and not happy, and the organization he's with seems like they're bitter and not happy. What are you hearing about Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets? It seems, if it's not a foregone conclusion, he's pretty openly talking about visiting other cities. They're pretty openly talking about being comfortable with him visiting other cities. And we know the Jets need a quarterback desperately, and they have, if anyone has stuff to trade, they have tons of picks. They have tons of young talent. They have a young coach who had backed his words up by guaranteeing the Jets were not going to mess around, and they didn't. They were a game or two away from being in the playoffs without a quarterback. What are you hearing about Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets?
Well, I mean, but what it boils down to, it's up to him and what he wants to do. Nobody knows what he wants to do.
Okay.
I mean, because he, first of all, does he want to play next year, which I imagine he does, but that's the one of the first decision he has to make, and definitive one. And then secondly, if he does want to play, where does he want to? Does he want to stay in Green Bay, which I think is still a possibility? I think both sides would probably want him back. That's kind of what I hear. Although they would also entertain if he wants to move on too. They would be fine. They would be okay with that as well, and Green Bay would end up starting over. Or does he want to decide to go somewhere else? And if he does, then it's not just the Jets that he could go to. The Raiders are also going to be looking for a quarterback. I guess they're going to be going to cut Derek Carr very shortly, if not today, if tomorrow, because he would be owed the big time guarantee if he's on the roster, after tomorrow. So yeah, I definitely think the Raiders are definitely in the midst there. Obviously, Devontae Adams, his friendship there with Rodgers, and the two can link back up once again. Out in Vegas there. No state tax there in Nevada, so I'm sure that plays a little bit of role. And Aaron Rodgers, he lives out in the California area throughout the off season, so also another benefit. And he's from California, but yeah, I know the Jets would definitely love to have Aaron Rodgers, but again, they don't necessarily know what he wants to do, so they need to make a decision. If Derek Carr becomes available, which he will be in the next couple of days, do you wait on Aaron Rodgers to come out, his darkness to retreat? Or do you also, decide, Derek Carr's going to be available? Why not just, bring him in for a visit, talk to him, and see if you might want land on him at the quarterback position and not wait, because you can't, you got to get one of the two, I believe, for it to be a successful offseason. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think it would be an upgrade if they were to get him too, but we also know that he has history of not being able to stay healthy. So if you end up getting Garoppolo, and you still at some point may have to go back to Zach Wilson, who they plan on keeping and still developing next year. And we kind of saw Zach still, his confidence was shaken at the end of the last year. Did not play well when he was under center. So I definitely think if you can get you get Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers, it will be a successful all season. Other than that, it's still a lot of questions with the Jets in that quarterback position that they're not going to be able to get one or the other.
Well, and then you answered a lot of the questions I was going to ask, but you covered not only the NFL, whether it was the Dolphins, the Panthers, the Jets, but you've covered a lot of college football, both down here and out west. So you probably had an eye on Zach Wilson in college. I didn't see him as a second overall pick, but I also didn't see him as a guy that would be a total bust either. You saw him this year. Look, they need to upgrade the quarterback position clearly, but I'm also intrigued because I thought that meant that you're now writing off a Zach Wilson. Like in this day and age, when you draft a guy that high, he plays or he sucks. Like it feels like there's no middle ground where you go old school with like Neil O'Donnell and McNair or Kitna and Carson Palmer. Like usually the young guy plays, he's good, he goes forward, he's not good, he's gone. But it feels like the Jets are in the middle somewhere where they know he's not good enough now, and they know they have a roster that actually can contend for the playoffs, possibly the Super Bowl, but they also don't want to let him go either. So you saw Zach Wilson. Like, did you see enough positives that he can still, because Carr's a little older now, right? Like Carr might not be there for the next 6 years. So maybe you could have your cake and eat it too. When you watch Zach Wilson, do you see positives? Do you see a guy that could figure it out and become a franchise NFL quarterback?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I really don't. I think. Well, it's funny at the beginning of the last year that Robert Saleh was like, "That's our quarterback. That's our quarterback, no matter what." Yeah. And then as you saw the things started to change a little. Even when they were winning and Zach was not playing well, they were winning in spite of his play. Yeah. He was still saying Zach is our quarterback. Like they wanted to continue to develop him. That was the whole thing. But the funny thing, and became involved, that what happened with that is the roster became much better. Went from a 4.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it was 4 games the year before, but I know they won 7, in 2022. But easily could have won more than that. Would have made the playoffs, and they had better quarterback play. But what ended up happening, especially after the Patriots game, the second Patriots game, and Zach Wilson did not play well at all, and the Jets should have won, and everybody knew it. And they lost because of Zach Wilson, and then the lack of accountability that he had.
Yep.
So that kind of like, okay, we have to make a change because we don't want to lose the team. If you'll lose this team, because of one guy. So they end up going to Mike White, and then after that, you could tell the tone just completely changed. It flipped after that to the point where they had, even if they went back to Zach, which they did against the Lions in Jacksonville. Again, his confidence was just not the same after that. So no, I don't see it. Could he become a franchise quarterback? Possibly with a good off season and some training and things of that nature. Yeah, sure, maybe. Anything can happen. With hard work and in the league there. But if you're asking me, just like a gunpoint, do I think he's going to be quarterback? No, I don't. I didn't think he should have been taken that high. I thought Justin Fields.
Yep.
No, he was the second best quarterback in that draft. I think they would be in a much different place if they end up having a guy like Justin Fields. So we see, he still has some questions on his own too, especially passing, being consistent there. But I feel like he's much more further along than Zach Wilson is at this point.
Before we let you go, the team that we are out of South Florida, so the team that we actually found you first covering was the Miami Dolphins, and I know you have a lot of Dolphin fan followers, and I know I'll notice you tweeting out Dolphin news here and there when you do get it or you do see it, so you do have an eye toward the Dolphins, and they are a rival in the same division as the New York Jets. Tua's doing the whole thing, and he did the interviews, and he's going to learn, and it's actually an interesting thing I've never heard someone say, but it actually does, the way he's falling and hurts him and gets hurt, it seems like it's avoidable a lot of the time. We don't see other quarterbacks hitting their head like that. He's talking about judo and other ways of learning how to handle hits better. The Dolphins looked really good for like 3/4 of the season and then struggled the last quarter, limping down the stretch, barely getting in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins heading this offseason? Where do you see them after this offseason?
Well, I mean, definitely critical all season, for them. I mean, it's gonna be they got an interesting decision to make with Tua. So, like, do you pick up his 5th-year option or do you not? I would not personally.
Oh, really?
Not because of his play. I mean, who he's played, he's been, really good. I mean, but for the most part, but it's just the fact that him not being available, and I definitely think you still have questions with that. So I think the best way to attack it is just don't pick up the option. See if he can stay healthy for a full year. If he can, then you could you can franchise tag him, for his 5th year, and then bring him back once again and see if he can do it again, or you have an opportunity to look on a long-term deal. So I definitely think just making that decision is first and foremost, and also I think finding a quality backup quarterback, a more quality, somebody that can stay healthy for the most part. I definitely think we talked about the Jets there. I think Mike White could possibly be an option for the Dolphins at the backup quarterback position. One, Mike White's from Fort Lauderdale, born and raised. I definitely think he'll be able to come back home, and we saw what Mike White was able to do. I thought he played solid football when he was healthy before the rib injury, and having him in there backing up to it, also a guy that has been it's a grinder in this league, to be able to back up to it, and also probably gives us advice on the league and everything like that. I think that'd be a great move for the Dolphins as well. So having both of those guys, just assuming if something were to happen to it, which history says it will, have a guy in there that has experience that, feel like he can stay healthy for the most part. So I definitely think, finding that quality quarterback, and also, the Fit Fangio move. I thought that was a really good move for the Dolphins defense. They slipped last year, getting a guy who's, led some tremendous defenses around the league for years to years. I definitely think it's going to transform the Dolphins for their defense, and bring out maybe the best of a guy like a Jalen Phillips, who I definitely think is we've yet to see the best out of him. We've seen it in flashes, but I definitely think a guy like Vic can unleash him and make him maybe like a 12-sack guy once a year. So I definitely think the Dolphins defense will take a turn this year, and I fully expect them possibly to be back in the playoffs once again.
Yeah, and look, and what people want to forget is it was their first year under another system. So you would think year 2 would be even better. Waddle, Hill, it seems like they're going to try and upgrade at the tight end spot, as Gesicki's not an all-around tight end, and that's what McDaniel looks for. And they do need a big body receiver, and that's something that they had in Ayuk. And even Samuel, to a certain extent, for as much as he's a playmaker, he's a big, strong dude. The Dolphins don't have that. They have speed, and that's great. You also need a guy that's your possession guy. And all the great offenses have it, and the Dolphins don't. So it feels like they either, if it's in the tight end spot or another wide receiver, they need to upgrade there. But it feels like they're close. And the question is, Tua, can he stay on the field? And I'm a guy who defended him a lot. Even I have to question it because he hasn't. He's missed at least 4 games every year. So we'll see. This is a big year for him. Before I let you go, the big coaching move so far, and I don't see one that'll be bigger, was Sean Payton coming back. Will they, won't they? Finally did agree to become the Broncos coach. I don't know if you saw more than I saw. What I saw of Russell Wilson was a shell of himself. A lot of people are talking about them fixing Russell Wilson. I mean, he's in his 30s. We see quarterbacks play till they're in their 40s now, but it's because they're just great and they don't need to be fixed. I find it hard to believe you're going to fix a guy who's a borderline, if not a surefire Hall of Famer in his 30s. From what you saw of Russell Wilson, what you've seen of Sean Payton, what are your thoughts on that hire, and what do you think he could possibly do with Russell Wilson and the Broncos?
Well, I think when they fired Nathaniel Hackett, I mean, the offense actually got better. Yeah. So, I definitely think that's a start. But I think they can improve Russell, like some of the things there. But I think what I saw from Russell last year, I mean, he's not nearly running as much. And obviously, when you get in your 30s, then you're different, athletically, and you don't necessarily want to run all the time like you did early in your 20s. But I don't know if he's I think they can bring out some of the best qualities he still has. But I don't know if he's still going to be the same guy that he once was, especially considering the fact that he's gotten older. I think what can help, I think one thing that will help is getting Devontae Williams back. You know, the draft pick from North Carolina years ago ended up tearing his ACL and was out for the year. Getting a guy like that, stud at the running back position back, has definitely take a lot of pressure off Russell Wilson. So he feels like he doesn't have to run all the time. And, you know, they got a good skill position players around. They got a really tremendous tight end, Jerry Jeudy. I really like, you know, improving that offensive line. I definitely think it will help us tremendously. Defensively, we know they're going to still be really good. We'll see who they get out there at the defensive coordinator spot, but I definitely think they still got a good foundation to be great on defense as they were last year. But yes, it's going to come down to can Russell Wilson make those sound decisions like how he did in Seattle. If he can, then, you know, I think the Broncos have an opportunity still to make the playoffs possibly. But, you know, they play in such a tough division where you got the Chiefs, obviously. We saw what they did in the Super Bowl, the Chargers. So I don't think they're going to go anywhere, even though I think there's still questions, you know, with Brandon Staley and some of his decision making. And we'll see what the Raiders decide to do because the Broncos couldn't even beat them last year. So they have nowhere to go but up. That's basically the best way to look at it for Denver.
So what is it for you now as season's over? You turned directly to the draft. I know you're a big college football guy, big draft guy, and the Jets should be highly involved outside the Dolphins who've traded away every pick or had picks taken away. I think the Jets are highly involved in the draft. Is that where you turn next?
Yes, the combine has started 2 weeks. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that definitely, that'll be something, you know, I turn my attention to. Well, I also take time off too as well before that. So, yeah, definitely do that. And then free agency will be start on March 15th. So it's right around the corner. So yeah, definitely the draft, free agency, combine. Yeah, that's definitely everything. All we're looking forward to at this point. But yeah, it definitely should be another fun offseason for everybody, including, you know, the Jets who always keeps things interesting.
They do, and this man does as well. Follow him on Twitter at Antwan Staley. He is great when it comes to football. He's a fan of all the sports. Plus, he's a foodie, has a keen eye for when it comes to barbecue, especially wings. You notice how you mentioned wings like 7 times? Antwan Staley's big on wings, and he knows his stuff, and he's a hip-hop connoisseur. So Twitter, music overall as well. So I'd follow this gentleman for sure on Twitter at Antwan Staley. And Antwan, well, I'll bring you back, hopefully talk some draft, as I know you're a big college football guy.
All right, sounds good. You take it easy.
Be well, man. Thank you so much. Antwan is a good dude. He was covering the Dolphins for, I don't know if it was Antwan Sports. It might have been USA Today. And I don't know if we found him because he made his own way, but we got him on our radar and we've been having him on ever since. And he's a guy who's really done the path of a writer because he's literally been everywhere. He was South Florida covering the Canes and the Dolphins. Then he, I think, went up to Tallahassee and covered FSU. Then he went up to Carolina, where he's from, was covering Carolina Panthers and doing some college sports there. Then he was out west covering Oregon Ducks. Now he's in New York and one of the better beats when it comes to being a sports writer at the New York Daily News, covering the New York Jets, which is a huge deal. And I know he still has an eye on all the teams he's covered in the past and the sports world at large. So I always love having him on. Appreciate his opinion. Again, at Antwan Staley on Twitter. Again, coming up at 12 o'clock, Mike Mayo's Lunchbox. We will have Perky. I call him Perk. Chris Perkins, the Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel, will be sitting in with us as Defo is out there in AC. Appreciate him joining me earlier. Appreciate Brett Tessler joining me earlier. We're talking lots and lots of Super Bowl. And also, we will soon, I'm sure, turn our attention to the NFL offseason that had already started as you had coaches fired and hired. Now, officially, it is offseason. We have the combine. I don't know if football is year-round per se. After the draft, we sort of die down for the months of May and June. But until the draft, football is still going to be front and center. The NBA season is going on right now, if people don't know. We're past halfway in games, but we haven't had the All-Star break yet. I think it's this weekend. The All-Star break is coming up. The Miami Heat, we talk a lot of South Florida sports at the South Florida Live. The Miami Heat have struggled against crappy competition lately, but did get wins over the Magic. and a not so good Indiana Pacers team, and the Rockets as well. 3 teams that weren't good, but 3 victories that they were able to accumulate. They are sitting in the 6th spot, but just a game and a half out of the 5th spot in the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it feels like the Nets are going to be falling flat soon as they went young. And Cam Thomas had some nice games. He also had some nice language. So the Nets, it feels like, are going to fall back at some point. What are the Heat? I don't know. I've talked a little bit about this. We do a broadcast on 5 Reasons Sports Network as well, so you can check that out. The Heat are interesting this year. I don't know if they're a contender for a title, but I do feel like they won't be a play-in team. So they're in a weird place. You don't really want to be in the NBA. But as we've seen with the Heat, they don't really tank. So this is where you find them when they try to figure things out. It does feel like they're a playoff team, and it feels like I can see them getting 1 series victory and then losing in the 2nd round. We'll see. And we'll see about the NFL offseason. Baseball, for those of you who still love what was once America's pastime, I don't think it is anymore. Pitchers and catchers, I think, are in the next couple weeks. You have spring training, I think, in the next 3 weeks or so, and then you have the season at the end of March, beginning of April. The Marlins have made some interesting moves, and Sixto, a guy that Defo and I love dearly, who is supposed to be the future of the Marlins rotation. Well, Sandy Alcantara, the reigning Cy Young winner, seems like he'll be that. But Sixto's down like 50 pounds, and he looks good. And Trevor Rogers, who was great 2 years ago and sucked last year, is supposed to be coming back. And Edward Cabrera, a guy who was supposed to be a young phenom. And Max Mayer, who was again supposed to be a young phenom. Marlins may have a strong rotation. They've made some actually moves with the lineup. So maybe we could care about baseball again down here. Who knows? The Panthers have found their way to the playoff conversation. So sports is abounding down here in South Florida. And we'll talk more about that next. Again, Defo is in Atlantic City. He'll be back Thursday. But he did join us this morning, and he will join us tomorrow and Wednesday. The phone sounded good to me once we got the connections all right. So we'll have Defo give his recap. There's nothing like Defo on the road with the Sting. So we'll have him tomorrow, and we'll have Mike Mayo at 12, and we'll have more of me next right here. The Defo Show, no Defo, just a little bit on South Florida Live.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs, unmatched. Steaks, hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at Beautiful, Highly Apart. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in Style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
Hey folks, Tony Segreto here. You know, since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of Old School. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapists, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place. And that one place is Catholic Health Services.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Mr. Pentangeli, were you a member of the Corleone family? Did you serve under capo regime under Vito Corleone, also known as the Godfather?
I never knew no Godfather.
Mr. Pentangeli, you are contradicting a sworn statement you previously made to me and signed. I ask you again, sir, here and now under oath, were you at any time a member of a crime organization headed by Michael Corleone?
I don't know nothing about that. Oh, I was in the olive oil business with his father. That was a long time ago, that's all.
We have a sworn affidavit. We have it. Your sworn affidavit that you murdered on the orders of Michael Corleone. Do you deny this confession?
Look, the FBI guys, they promised me a deal. So I made up a lot of stuff about Michael Corleone, because that's what they wanted. But it was all lies. Everything. And I kept saying, Michael Corleone did this, and Michael Corleone did that. So I said, yeah, sure.
It's now time for the Defo Show.
Appreciate everyone who stuck around with me this morning. Defo was Defo, live from Atlantic City. I don't know what he ended up putting down. We had all these props, so I was trying to keep track of everything heading into the game last night. The first catch thing we talked a lot about, Juju Smith-Schuster and Kadarius Toney were getting like 16-1. And if the Chiefs got the ball, you could feel like they may have gotten it first. Well, they didn't. The Eagles got it first. So that threw that one up. The Kelsey getting at least one touchdown happened in the first quarter. So he would have gotten that one right. The anthem, for most of the time, the number was 201 and it went 202 plus. So if you had 201, you got the over. What's funny is if you had 202, and I guess the professor told me the day of the anthem, the number was set at 202. It went 202.79 officially. So if you had 202, you got to push, which I guess now is only the third time since they've started keeping track and betting on the anthem that you got to push. So that was interesting. Mahomes, I don't know if he got there was weirdo bets about 5 touchdowns. He didn't get 5 touchdowns. Hurts got close. Hurts had 4, I think. Hurts, I think, ran for 3 and threw for 1. Hurts got close to a 5 touchdown thing. And look, I said it with Antwan Staley. I still don't know what. To me, look, and Lamar Jackson's a great athlete. He's a really good quarterback. But when you can stop a quarterback's athletic ability and they have to sit there throwing and they're a different quarterback, that I question what you like. To me, you're not going to be a top 5 guy. But here's the deal. They were in the Super Bowl and they were real close to winning. And Jalen Hurts was a big part of that. So I don't know if you put him in top 5 conversation. I don't know where you rank him with the stupid rankings. But Jalen Hurts is definitely better than I gave him a lot of credit. Is he better than a Tua? A lot of people talked about that because I think they were in similar drafts. I don't know. I think the Eagles team is freaking loaded. I think the Eagles literally have everything you want in a team. They have an elite tight end. They have an elite receiver. They have a guy in Devontae Smith who's definitely a really good number 2. That's for sure. They have a really good running game. Their line is the best in football. Their defensive line is the best in football. Or it's right there with the Niners as one of the best in football. They have a great linebacker. They literally have everything. So Hurts doesn't have to do a lot, and he doesn't. And he makes nice plays, but it really isn't on him. So to me, I think a lot of quarterbacks would shine on that team. But he is there, and he is shining at this moment. So I don't know about retract, but I have to give him credit for turning into the quarterback I didn't think he could be. It's going to be an interesting offseason across the NFL because the Eagles aren't going anywhere. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. There was a lot of talk that Reed could retire. It seems like he's not. Okay, so Defo asked a question about Bieniemy, and I actually started to hear that information last week, but I wasn't sure, so I left it alone. I don't know, like, because the scuttlebutt is you're not hearing his name. He wasn't getting NFL head coaching jobs, but he was getting interviews. Okay. The last 2 years, you haven't even really heard him getting interviews. So a lot of people, I thought, and people didn't fight me on this, was okay, maybe there's some behind the scenes deal that he knows Reed's going to coach maybe another 2-3 years, because I think he's in his mid to late 60s. And when that's done, Bieniemy will take over. So why would he want to take another job? Well, Holmes is like 26. Like, the dude, even injured, is great, So if you have Mahomes going forward, that's a lot better coaching position than any other one that's popping up. But now we're hearing that Bieniemy is actually looking to move on to another offensive coordinator job, which is weird. So here's the deal, and we've seen this. We saw this in college. Like Kenny Dillingham left Florida State. He was an offensive coordinator, but he was under an offensive mind, Mike Norvell, so he really didn't get to call the plays. So he went to Oregon under his friend Dan Lanning to be the offensive coordinator, but it's almost like what Vic Fangio is going to be. He was the offensive head coach. He got to call the plays. He got to be responsible for the offense. So it allowed him to show himself in a different light. Bo Nix changed his game around. Dillingham now is the coach of Arizona State, and early on, he's doing a really good job at Arizona State, right? So Bieniemy is not getting head coaching opportunities as an offensive coordinator under Andy Reid. Now, it's dumb because both Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson were offensive coordinators under Andy Reid in the same exact position. They weren't calling plays, but got a lot of credit for it. Now, both lost their first jobs, so maybe that soured people on the offensive coordinator on Andy Reid, or maybe there's racism. I mean, that you can't, that's the elephant in the room, and it's a pretty big fucking elephant, because Bieniemy had the exact same job. He's actually held it longer and been more successful. I think he's had it for like the last 5 years when they went to AFC title games and won 2 Super Bowls. So whether or not he's calling the plays, and Andy Reid, and I'm giving Andy Reid a lot of credit for last night, Bieniemy's been there. So he's done more than Peterson and more than Nagy, and they both got chances. But he's not getting the chances, okay? So maybe what he's thinking is, look, let me go to a place where there's not an offensive coach there. So at least if I'm the OC and when the offense does well, I'll be the guy now. Now they can't tell me, oh, it's Andy, or oh, it's the interviewing. Because in Kansas City, he's not getting opportunities. And Andy Reid, who was supposedly contemplating retirement last night, literally is like, oh, no, not at all. Okay, so then what is Bieniemy doing? It would be 100% a side move, but if it's under the right guy, where it's a defensive head coach that leaves him alone and the offense is his, that is clearly something he's not getting in Kansas City. And then race, whatever you want to do, if you're an NFL person, you can't ignore it. If their offense, whatever team he's on, let's say, because he hasn't left, from what we know, he hasn't really interviewed for any other jobs yet, but if he goes and takes over an OC job for a team that has a defensive-minded head coach, and then that offense turns around, let's say you're like, I don't even know who the Bears head coach is, but their offense has been dreadful. If you're able to turn around a bad offense and you are the guy, you can't deny that then. So we'll see if he actually interviews. We'll see if he leaves with Eric Bieniemy. It's just the whole situation has been strange. And look, we've seen African-Americans black guys get interviews. We've seen them, D'Amico Ryans just as a defensive guy, just went home where he played a lot of his pro career with the Houston Texans and took that job as an African-American, a black coach. But if you look at what's going around the league, it's still a lot of white guys getting the head coaching job. The Eagles offense coordinator, I'd never heard his name, and Sirianni's only been there 2 years, so how long is the guy? Looks like he's 15, Nick whatever, or Shane, whatever his name, Shane Stature, whatever his name is. They've only been there 2 years. How much has he actually done? And honestly, Sirianni's an offensive guy, so how much offense is he coaching? But the Colts have tapped him as their guy, white guy. Sean Payton, great coach. Bronco tapped him as their guy, white guy. Like, the hires that we're seeing, it's still a lot of white guys. So the African-Americans are not still getting the equal opportunities. So I don't know what's happening with Eric Bieniemy. It feels like there's a little bit of that in there, a little bit of the Andy Reid thing, a little bit of the Nagy, Peterson, their first jobs, even though Peterson did win a Super Bowl. And looks like the guy in Jacksonville, both of them did lose their first job within, I think, 3-4 years. So maybe they're like, oh, it's the Belichick thing. It's actually not them. It's Andy Reid. I don't know. I just know the Bieniemy thing is strange. Defo did bring it up earlier, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, so I wanted to touch on it there. It's going to be an interesting NFL draft. The Miami Dolphins don't have a first-round pick after years of having 2 and 3 first-round picks. So I'm sort of at a loss when it comes to this draft, but I know we'll pay attention to it. The NBA season is inching to the All-Star break, but we are past the halfway point. The Nets are free-falling, and I think they will continue to do that. The Heat have been okay. Butler and Bam have been amazing. The rest of the team is a disaster. They were not able to make a trade deadline deal, and we didn't get to really talk much about that because we had the Degenerate Friday. We were Super Bowl intensive. The Heat, I thought, would make a deadline deal. They didn't have the pieces. I forgot they weren't even allowed to trade Hero, which would have been the guy you needed to trade to get someone substantial. But the other pieces they have weren't enough to get a player. So we'll see. The buyout is interesting this year because there's a lot of guys that are legit NBA players that were involved in trades and aren't happy where they are. So it seems like they're going to get bought out. So the Heat probably can improve the roster that way. But it feels like they aren't going to get in that Celtics-Bucks conversation. But maybe they can take out a Sixers or a Nets or a Cavs, get to a second round. I'm actually reserving judgment on the Heat right now until I see what happens with them the rest of the way. Wins are wins in the pros, but when you play a Magic team and you play the Rockets are definitively the worst team in basketball. They are clearly tanking for Wembanyama, and it came down to like a fucking weirdo. I think the dunk was the Magic, but the dunk may have been the Rockets, where Jimmy Butler makes a crazy dunk to win the game. Like, it shouldn't come to that. The Magic was very similar, where the Heat were in a tight ball game, had to go to overtime with the Magic, and then ended up winning 107-103. They're getting wins, which matter, but they're struggling. Kyle Lowry's done. Like, he's done, and he's totally useless. Oladipo's fine, but he's not an all-star. Hero took a step forward, and then he took 2 steps back. So they're in a weird place. The Knicks have been interesting. The Bulls are hanging around. The Cavs are improved. So where do the Heat go from last year when it feels like they've taken a step down? That's why I'm reserving judgment because again, Butler is a top 15 player. Bam has turned into a top 15 player. When you have 2 top 15 players, you never know in a sport that only has 5 guys on the playing field at one time. But when you look at logic, the Celtics are better and the Bucks are better, and there's a bunch of teams in the West that are better. So for a team that was a shot away from the NBA Finals, it feels like they're very far away from that this year. Again, we'll see what happens with that. Baseball is coming on. The hockey season is winding down. College basketball is Jim Sarney. I don't follow college women's basketball. I hope I'm not a sexist in that. I haven't done it in years. I used to in the 90s. But men's college basketball is coming down the stretch, as we'll have March fun here soon. So we'll definitely talk more about that, as FAU is seemingly firmly entrenched in the tournament field. Our Miami Hurricanes, we love Coach Jim Larinaga, are firmly entrenched in the field and look like they're hopefully going to wreak havoc on the ACC. So we'll talk about all of that. And we will have the one and only Jeff DeForest back tomorrow, as he's not going to be on with me the entire show, but the phone thing worked out this morning. It's cool to start with Defo, let you at least get your Defo fix, because I'm well aware what Defo does and what I do are very different. I try not to do an old school sports talk show, but I also am nowhere near the humorous Defo is. So I've learned from Defo, know your lane and stick to it. Don't try. When people who aren't funny try to be funny, it's worse than not being funny. Like, I know I have my sense of humor and I can throw little jabs, and I'll do that, but I'm not a comedian. Defo's a guy that probably could be a comic if he wanted to. He just doesn't. He likes doing this. So we're grateful for that, because we get to have him each and every day here. But I'm not him. I'm not close to him. So it's better to just do what you do than sit here and try and like be funny. When you're not funny and try and be funny, it's fucking lame and it's almost sad and pathetic. And that's not me. But I am a guy who loves talking some sports, and I am a guy who loves his food and can't wait to talk more food at 12 o'clock with Mike Mayo and Chris Perkins. Definitely stay tuned with us for that. Stay tuned with us. Check out our national podcast. Brandon Lang was hysterical. He was wrong on the Super Bowl because he had gone with the Chiefs in the past and they let him down. So he hated Andy Reid, hated the Chiefs, and bit him in the ass because the Chiefs won. But he was hysterical. So you should check that out. The Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours. Check us out on 5 Reasons Sports Network. We have a lot of our South Florida sports there. And check us out each and every morning right here at 7 a.m. like tomorrow for Mr. DeForest in Atlantic City. For Brett Tessler, the agent of the stars. For Antwan, Staley, and thank you to all that joined in. I appreciate you checking us out this morning. Again, check us out at 12 o'clock for Mike Mayo's Lunchbox and at 7 a.m. tomorrow on The Defo Show with Lubie here on South Florida Live.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my show.